How did you get blocked in UK Amazon? What happened there?
So I was buying a ton of questionable items. Obviously, it turned out that those items were fake.
What kind of books do you sell?
A ton of textbooks.
How do you get ungated for textbooks?
Yeah, that is an annoying thing. So I think the only way you can get ungated is...
When did you decide it's time to use a repricer? And what did you use before you used BQool?
And I saw a few other influencers recommend BQool. So I just thought, I'll give it a try. And as soon as I opened it up, I just thought, oh, this looks much better. This is really easy to use.
How much has your total sales increased?
It's definitely risen a lot.
What are your future plans?
So we want to hit a rolling $2 million per year.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We have a very special guest with us today, Seth Baker, who started selling on Amazon just a couple of years ago in 2018. And he's achieved 6 figures earnings in his first year. And now, from the last time we talked to him, he was doing $1 million of sales. Now he's hitting almost $2 million of sales on Amazon. And he's doing all of this remotely. He also has a growing YouTube channel, a podcast called Books, Business, and Growth. And he also has a Facebook group called Sell Books FBA, which I'm going to share in the description below. So we welcome Seth. Welcome, Seth. Welcome to our show today.
Thanks very much for the intro. Thank you for having me.
So, Seth, to help our audience to get to know you a little bit more, why did you start your Amazon business? And how did you start your Amazon business to help us to understand where you're coming from?
So I started Amazon because I really wanted to get out of the 9-to-5 grind. I was doing a finance job in the City of London and it was very dull. I really didn't enjoy any part of it whatsoever. But I didn't know what that business model to get me out of that 9-to-5 was going to be whatsoever. And I just decided one day to start Googling how do you make money online, as I'm sure a lot of people do. And then you get given a ton of search results for a ton of different business models. And I kind of dived in between a bunch of different ones, whether it was Bitcoin trading or like selling on eBay and things like that. And I kind of like researched a bunch of them, maybe dipped my toes in a little bit, put maybe like 10 to 100 pounds or into each one just to have a little look, have a play around. And then I just stumbled across a YouTube video that said that you can buy items from your local high street stores and resell them on Amazon for a profit. And as soon as I saw that video, I thought this could be the one for me, or this should be the one for me, just because I really appreciated the simplicity of it. You could pretty much do it. All you needed was an Amazon subscription to go out to the shop to buy the stock, and then a cardboard box, right, to put all your stock in and then send it off. And that was pretty much it. So then like literally the next day, I went to my local like high street stores and started like scanning stuff. And well, I wasn't even scanning actually. I was just buying things that were selling a little bit more expensive on Amazon before I knew anything about Amazon fees, anything like that. Boxed a load of things up, sent them off, and then kind of the rest is history. This was in the UK though, so I only did that for about 6 months in the UK, and then I did get banned, which we can talk about if people want to. But then I moved on to the US market, which was actually I didn't actually make that much money on the UK market, but moving over to the US market, I just discovered books through a different sales funnel, different software for finding books that's still around. And yeah, the rest is history there, because I kind of just went all in on that. And as you said, yeah, made six figures in my first year. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the start.
But let me ask you, like, how did you get blocked in UK Amazon? What happened there?
So, like I said previously, that I wasn't really looking into the details or the data when I first started going to the high street stores. I didn't know anything about Amazon fees, didn't know anything about FBA. So allied to that, I didn't really know anything about the rules. So I didn't know that you needed receipts and invoices. I didn't know that you needed to possibly be buying from trusted sources, reliable sources. So I was buying a ton of questionable items, shall we say, on eBay, which were from sellers that were not reliable at all. And obviously it turned out that those items were fake. But I wasn't really noticing or thinking about it, because all I was seeing was, oh, I can buy this for $25 or £20 and resell it on Amazon very easily according to the keeper data or whatever data people use, and I can resell it for double that. So all I saw was dollar signs going off in my head. I wasn't really thinking, oh, Amazon might not take kindly to this, the customers might not take kindly to this, I could get banned. And then when I did get banned, it somehow came as a shock to me. But obviously in hindsight, I realized that I just wasn't being a very good seller, I wasn't being a very good entrepreneur, and I shouldn't have done any of those things. But I guess everything happens for a reason, and I may not have found the American market so soon, or it might have taken years after that. And maybe I might not have ever found it because I might have given up. So it ended up being a good thing, I think, in the long run. But yeah, don't buy dodgy goods off eBay would be my first bit of advice for this.
Do you live in the US? Like you're selling in the US market, right? So
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the craziest thing about starting this business, was that the reason I started on the UK, because I assumed that if you're in the UK, you can only sell in the UK, and obviously you've got the Europe fulfillment channel. But I never had any designs or ideas that you could do this from the UK and sell on the US market without having to touch any of the stock, right? This was before I even knew what a prep service was. So fortunately, I found out this information quite quickly after opening a US account. But it blew my mind as soon as I found this out. So I've obviously not touched any books that I've sold in the US market, which is pretty crazy, because now I must have sold over 30,000 books, maybe more than that now. So, and I've not touched a single one, which is kind of cool and kind of crazy.
So you're doing all this remotely. Like, what are some of the craziest places that you've worked in?
Because I was in London for quite a while, so I've actually only been doing this remotely for about a year and a half. So I feel like I've not squeezed the juice of that lemon quite as much as I'd like to. But I have been to Mexico a couple of times, both for quite long stints for about 5 or 6 months this year and last year. I went to Dubai as well. I've been to Greece a few times. This summer, I'm going to, well, I've already been to Spain. I'm going to Serbia, Macedonia, Kosovo, Hungary, and I'm probably forgetting a couple more, but doing a bit of a Europe tour. And obviously the beauty of it is that all I need to take is some clothes and a laptop, and hope that the hotels I stay in have got Wi-Fi, and I'll be able to run everything remotely, which is cool.
Well, that's amazing. How did you scale up? Like, my understanding is you started with maybe 5,000 pounds. How did you scale from 5,000 pounds to a million US?
Yeah, it's a good question. It has all been bootstrapped, except I've taken a couple of credit cards out which had zero interest credit on them. For one of them was 18 months and one of them was about 27 months, I think. I say that, but I actually used those, and then I only used those for a few months. So it pretty much, that first 5,000 was all I needed to set up. And it's just the beauty of compounding, and the beauty of Amazon and the business model is that, yeah, some people aren't interested in looking for the best deal on the market. They just want the most convenient deal on the market. And somehow that means, especially with books, that we can buy books for $10 to $20 on one site that's not Amazon and resell it for potentially $200. And that's not that crazy. That probably happens nearly daily now in our business, because it's obviously grown a certain size. So I still look at the sales every day, and I will often see books that we sell for between 100 and 200 that we bought for 10 to 20. So if you think about the profit on that, the margin is absolutely crazy. And it means that if you do start with £5,000, which is probably what, like $6,500, $7,000, if you keep cycling that and you don't take any money out of business as well. I've only taken a very small amount of the business when it was totally possible to do. And yes, if you're recycling your money and you're compounding and you're making the right choices and you're not squandering it on Lambos or expensive dinners or whatever people like to spend money on, then it is totally possible, and anyone can do it. And obviously it seems like a really short period of time, but 4 years, you can do a lot in 4 years, right? It's that quote that you overestimate what you can do in 1 year, but you underestimate what you can do in 5. And I think that's definitely an example here of that.
Like, if I was, somebody in Europe, or I'm an EU seller, how much does it require to start up as an international seller like you and selling it to the US?
Well, it's not that much more expensive compared to, I guess the joy of doing it in the UK was that you could probably find a cardboard box somewhere So you're not spending money on that, and you could ship it in yourself. So you're saving the prep fee, but you're also spending potentially hours. Well, I was spending hours and hours and hours a week prepping stuff and sending it in. But if you are electing to use a prep service, or you're actually forced into, like myself or anyone else in Europe, then depending on the prep service you use, I think you'll spend anything from $250 to $350 per item or per book for them to ship it into Amazon. They do everything for you. They'll list it for you. They'll put it in the box. They won't charge you for the box, depending on the prep service. So the only costs are, you need a bit of money for inventory, potentially, that I'd say $1,000. Then you want to be able to cover that prep service. And then the other fees, the Amazon professional subscription, right? So kind of when you're starting out, it's just that free. And then obviously when you start scaling, you get more SKUs, then you want your repricer, and you might want a few other software tools, but that comes once you've started buying some books and sending them in.
What parts of the job can you outsource? And what part do you got to do yourself? Because you talk about looking at the sales every day, right? So what parts of the job can you outsource?
Yeah, I don't need to look at the sales every day. Just I just do it because I actually still really I love books, right? So I actually like seeing what obscure titles we've sold, or like what odd books we've managed to sell and for how much. So that's just a habit of mine that I actually don't need to do. I pretty much have outsourced nearly, I'd say 90% of the business, because I have hired VAs from the Philippines. I hired my first VA last January, so January 2021. And then by the back end of 2021, I think I had like 5 or 6. We're on number 9. So we've got an admin VA and 8 sources and repricers. So the only things I do are a couple of like higher level financial things, like helping with the financial returns, not interesting stuff, but I could also outsource that as well. But I've kept my hands in that for now. I don't have to do too much each day, is what I'm trying to say.
So talking about VAs, like how do you find them? And then how do you manage them?
I found them through Fast Track FBA, which is another business that helps hire virtual assistants. I know people do it another way. You can put CVs or resumes or job descriptions, on phjobs.com, or is that either way? You can search job boards on the Filipino job sites or other countries like that. But I felt that I didn't want to invest too much time in the hiring process, because firstly, I don't think it doesn't really interest me very much. And also I thought the fee to pay this service was just worth saving my time, because they're going to do the hiring, they're going to do the interviewing, they also do the training, and then I get kind of a fully ready virtual assistant without having to do any of the work, but just pay a little bit out of the business. So that's pretty much been my process for the last year and a half.
So compared to, let's say, looking for my own VA on Fiverr or Upwork or other sites, for Fast Track FBA, like what do they do for you and how much do they cost?
Yeah, so using Fiverr or any other thing like that, I didn't want to run the risk of potentially hiring someone that wasn't adequate, or you hear a lot of horror stories with fraud and stuff like that. So I know that these services such as Fast Track will vet these people quite thoroughly. They'll make sure their resumes are, good enough to do the job. They'll do like rigorous training. They'll do interviews, and they do like a full week of training on Amazon. And then when they came to me, I do have to still teach them the books portion of it, but that's kind of part and parcel of it, because books is quite unique in itself. I don't really expect anyone to have that sort of tailor-made service, unless maybe I provide that in the future. But that's not something on my horizon just yet. But they do everything that I would want, without me having to have the stress of worrying whether I'm hiring the right person.
That's great. Yeah. So for people looking for VAs, that's definitely a solution that could save a lot of time. Now, for prep and pack, how much profit does the book need to give you in order for you to use it? You talk about the prep and pack just now, $2.50 to $3 US. What kind of profit does a book need to give you in order for you to use the prep and pack service?
We as a business are not too interested in whether it's going to make $1 or $10 profit, really. So as long as there's an ROI there, we like to aim for a 25% plus ROI, because I feel like if you're focusing on low value or low profit items, then you're taking your focus away from higher value and higher profit items. So I don't mind looking at the sales every day and seeing 10 to 15 books that only made us a couple of dollars. But as long as the majority of our books are making hopefully $20 plus net profit. So I would like the team and I to be focusing quite heavily on just like the higher ticket items, because even just looking at the proportionality of FBA fees, it makes sense to sell higher value items, right? Because you're going to make more profit. That's just the nature of the way the fees work. So we like high value, high profit.
High value, high profit. That's the way to go. So for the high value, high profit, what kind of books do you sell?
So we used to sell a ton of textbooks, and we still do sell a lot of textbooks because, as most people will probably know, the textbook market is thriving. It probably always will be. Students are always going to want physical textbooks. They've got big student loans, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of schools or universities across the country. And when August comes along, they all need to buy a textbook, same as in January. And if you can learn the market well enough, you will be able to buy secondhand textbooks in say this month or in December for a very low price. And then because you know the demand's going to rise way up and the supply is going to go down, you should be able to hit a nice point where you can make a ton of profit. And there's plenty of people in this business who actually only operate in January and August, and they still make a ton of money. Just like you might have your retail arbitrage or online arbitrage people making all their money in November, right? It's similar in books, but the beauty of it is that we get two Q4s essentially. We also sell a bunch of other books in other categories that people go crazy for. So whether that be Bibles or comics or cooking books or massive coffee table books that people go crazy for, and they're up for paying a lot of money for. There's books in all categories that can make you money, I'd say, except calendars. Just don't buy a calendar, right? Because it's just going to go out of date. But every other category is great.
How do you get ungated for textbooks? Because those publishers, they don't allow everybody to sell their textbooks.
Yeah, that is an annoying thing. So I think the only way you can get ungated is, as far as I know, is having a squeaky clean account, and tenure is the most important thing. That's what I'm learning. I'm thinking is just, if you've got an older account, you're able to sell more books. And there's plenty of books that Amazon just won't ever let you sell because they're just so known to be counterfeit, right? So there's still a bunch of books that we can't sell, but because we've got a 4.5-year-old account, we can sell a bunch of textbooks. A lot more than the newbie seller. But for the newbie sellers who want to get into books watching, I would just say you just need to be patient, and the longer you sell, the more books you'll be able to sell, and you'll be more successful in the long run. So yeah, it's just a patience game. You can't trick the system, unfortunately, as far as I know.
So when you're starting out, let's say you have very few reviews, you might not be able to sell that many textbooks. Like, you have to try. What happens? What do you do?
I don't know if it's based on reviews. I just think you need to keep on selling more books. The more books you sell, and the longer that you've been selling, Amazon has more trust in your account. They're going to trust in you buying from the right sources and not buying books that are potentially from India, which might be counterfeit or things like that. So I just think it's a trust thing from them, and they've obviously got some sort of algorithm running it. I'm sure there's no humans looking at it just saying, yep, Seth can now sell this textbook, so that's why it's so difficult to answer that question. It's just from what I've seen speaking to other sellers who have been in the game either longer than me or nearly as long, they can usually sell a similar amount of textbooks to me, and that just seems to be the way it is.
So many people are a bit scared to get into Amazon. What would you say to somebody in that situation, and what would your suggestion be for them?
Firstly, I'd ask why they're scared. I mean, I was kind of scared to get into other business models because it looked like there's a lot of startup costs and things like that, which I guess you have with private label and things like that, right? So I would say that getting into books especially is one of the easiest and safest ways of getting into Amazon and business in general. And you don't really need to buy too many books. You don't need to have that much money in stock to learn very fast, right? So as long as you can buy, say, 20 to 30 books, that's a box that your prep center can then send off for you. And then based off those 20 to 30 books, even if all 30 of those are terrible buys, you've learned that those 30 books you will never buy again, and you'll learn why those were terrible buys, right? So that investment is a good investment, even though you've made poor decisions, right? So I did that to begin with. I made a ton of bad buys, and everyone does. As long as you've got the determination, the tenacity to carry on from that, and also learn from your mistakes, so that hopefully the next box of books has only got maybe 10 bad buys, and then you've got 10 to 20 good ones, and then the profits from that you'll be able to keep cycling, and then you go from there. It's just learning from your mistakes and just, yeah.
What do you do with the bad buys? Like, what do you do with, as in the US, they say the death stock, like death pile? What do you do with those duds?
I've never heard of the death pile. That's a new one for me. But
Oh,
the
okay.
duds, we've got our Sell Essential set up so that after 365 days, if the book hasn't sold, then it just gets disposed of. So I figure that if a book is not sold in a year, I've already sunk that cost, and I'm going to take the loss on it. So, but we'll aggressively reprice those books before it gets to that point, which we can obviously talk about.
Yes, yes. With the new conditional repricing, now you can set by the inventory age as well when it passes over 271 days, because now there's even more charges by Amazon, more than the long-term storage fees after 365 days. Come back and let's talk a little bit about sourcing here. I have a number of textbooks here with me, and this is going to be fun. And I'm just going to share my screen, and then you can kind of walk us through of whether or not we should sell this book. And then if you were to sell this book, how would you price this book based on your experience and maybe the keep a chart, things like that. Is that cool with you?
Absolutely cool with me.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to take this book, and the book name for this is Layman's Medical Embryology. Okay. I seem like I could pronounce that correctly. So it's a medical textbook. Yeah. And I'm going to just I'm going to just share my screen now here so everybody can see it. And so I have this book on Amazon right now, the same book. And look, here's another question. I'm just wondering, like on Amazon, I'm noticing a lot of textbooks could be rented now as well. Does that affect your business or?
Fortunately, the rental model has been around since I started, and it doesn't appear to affect anything, because I think there's so many students that there's a certain portion that want to rent, and there's a certain portion that want to buy new, and there's a certain portion that want to buy used. And fortunately, there's enough students who want to buy used that we can make money as a business and grow the business. So
okay, good.
There's enough pie for everyone, really.
Okay, so the pie is big enough for everyone. So I'm looking at this textbook, and then this is like 14th edition. And the textbook I got here is an 8th edition. And I tried looking for it on Amazon, and I can't even find the 8th edition textbook. Does that mean that I'm looking wrong, or what am I doing here?
Yeah, it completely depends on the type of textbook. Some textbooks will have an old edition that it'll be on a school curriculum list, and then you'll still be able to buy and sell that for a profit because it's just favored. So it could be like an edition of just a normal, I'm just trying to think of just a normal book, or some editions are going to be better than others, right? Just by the nature of, for some reason, one of the writers in it just put particularly good info in it, right? So, but this looks like an example of a textbook where the newest one is the most in demand, and you're probably not going to want the 8th edition because it's either out of date, it's got out of date data, or just no one wants to buy it, right? And that's probably why you can't find it on search, because no one's searching for it. It's not on any school lists, and the new one's better. And also I can see already the new one is $65 to buy, which is a lot cheaper than a ton of other textbooks. So that could be another reason why old editions still sell, because they're just more affordable. Whereas some medical textbooks will be $250, $300, and a lot of people can't afford that, right? Understandably.
Okay, let's go to a more expensive book here. I have a hardcover. It's also another medical textbook. Yeah, so I'm going to type it into Amazon. I'm just going to, ignore that textbook. That one probably can't even find the listing. But let's find this one, and I'm going to type it into Amazon here. So this is Harrison's Principles of Internal Medicine. All right, I found it here. Principle of Internal Medicine. It's a little bit more expensive, $200. here, and the one I have here is a 17th edition. I found this book. I guess is not. I don't know. Like, is this a good book to have? Like, this is the same one I have here. So I have the same textbook here as this one.
Right. Well, you definitely want the 21st edition, but
Right.
that won't be easy to get.
So where do I go from here? Like, is this book not like this book is pretty like there's so many there's books as cheap as $9.97. Like,
Yeah.
this is incredible. This seller has whoa, look at the ratings on the it's very difficult for me to compete against them.
Well, absolutely, but it depends if you're selling FBA or not, right? So the model that a lot of sellers will adopt, which we definitely adopt this strategy, is we will buy potentially if we know that this textbook is going to be sold a lot next month or in January, and obviously we're in a really good time because we're recording this in the middle of July, right? So we would potentially buy up all of these lower offers, resend them in, and then just wait until the following month and then resell them for a profit because we know that this book is going to go out of stock and we're going to be the stock fillers for those students. They're not going to realize that they're paying way over the odds because they've been too late to the party and students aren't necessarily going to be too bothered. I mean, for example, if you just look at the top there, you can see that the FBA seller, the latest FBA seller
Let
is
me
set.
go back to
Is,
that. Which
yeah.
tab should I go back to?
No,
The
it's saying
used one.
you can see it. You can see it here. This is fine. Yeah. So
Okay.
if you look at the used buy box there, you can see that someone's selling on the used buy box for $27.44, and we just saw that we can buy it the cheapest copy for 10. So straight away there, that is a potential profitable buy and sell, right? Because if you buy that for $10, spend $2.50 on the shipping, and you sell it for $27.44, your profit stock will be great, but you're still going to make $5 profit, something like that, which is actually a pretty good ROI.
Okay.
And that's now, that's in a time of where people aren't buying textbooks. So you don't know if that used buy box at $27.44, that could easily go up to $65. And this is the sort of thing that happens very regularly during August and January. And that's the beauty of the textbook book arbitrage business model.
Oh, okay. So I see. So there's 27. The FBA, the one who owns the buy box right now, is 27.44. But we could see that you could actually get the book used from 9.97 at this time point, and this actually might rise when the school season starts.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Another question: what if I want to find books that I can buy, but I don't know which books I should get? Where do I start? You've recommended 4 or 5 different websites to look for books in the past. How would I know which book to get? Because there's thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of books on Amazon.
Yeah, this is obviously the thing that I get the most questions about is sourcing, because you can get your head around the business model, you can get your head around Amazon Seller Central and FBA and prices and sort your numbers out. But the actual sort of like finding the books is obviously the hardest thing to do. There are a few softwares out there. I won't recommend any particular. All you need to type in is kind of book arbitrage into Google, and you'll see a couple of softwares where you can scroll through their database and you can look for deals via that way. So that's a very good way of doing it. My favorite recommendation for people starting out would be to open a Keeper account. I saw you had Keeper on your Amazon page there. It would be Open Keeper. I think it costs $25 a month now, something like that. And you just get the best tool for Amazon of all time. And it used to be free, a couple of years back, and people were in uproar that you had to start paying for it. But it's the best $25 that our team use every month, because it's not just a sourcing tool, it's an analysis tool. It's got so much data in it. It's so powerful. And learning how to use that is the equivalent of kind of learning Excel if you're an accountant, right? Just like getting really good at Microsoft Excel is super useful, right? It's the same with Keeper. So, and the cool thing about Keeper is that you can set alerts on up to 5,000 items. So this was how our business really got propelled, because before I even had VAs, I kind of furiously went through 5,000 books and set alerts for them at prices that we wanted to buy them. So for example, for that book there, we might set an alert at $8, and then as soon as Keeper notices that seller has listed a book at $8, then you'll get a Chrome notification or an email telling you Harrison's Principles of Internal Medicine 70th edition is now available for $8. And then you can quickly go in, buy that book, and then hopefully resell it for a profit. If you think about it, if you've got 5,000 items that Keeper are constantly 24/7 looking for, then you're going to, without a doubt, as long as you're setting them on the right books, you're going to be getting deals coming into your email inbox or via Chrome notification all day, every day. Like before I had a team, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd furiously go through my emails to see which books I can buy, see which ones are still available. That was kind of my life for a good year or two. It was just waking up and trying to buy the books that were still available. But I think that's the most accessible, the cheapest, and the best way to find good books currently.
So one of the good ways is you could use Keepa, and then there must be some type of criteria you have for sourcing the book. Then you know which books that you should source, and then you put an alert. And then when you see the price it's lower, then you could actually go in, buy that book, wait a few months, and then you start listing for a much higher price when you see that big price difference. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, and that's where BQool can come in and be really helpful. But I obviously don't want to bog the audience down in the details. But in Keeper, there are ways to filter so that you're setting alerts on good books, right? So there's a tool called Product Finder. If you can get your head around Product Finder, you will be golden, and you should be able to do really well. But if you combine Product Finder with the alerts and eventually using a repricer like BQool, you should be in good stead to be successful on the platform.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah. And what would your selection criteria be? Like when you decide whether or not to sell a textbook? You mentioned that you want to have at least $25 of profit or 25% ROI. Are there other criterias like bestseller rank? How would you decide?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's obviously lots of different factors that we factor in depending on category, right? So with textbooks, we will generally want to be looking at BSR, bestseller ranks. We always look at averages, right? So we'll generally look at a 90-day or 180-day average, lower than 1 million generally for textbooks. That's actually quite high for a lot of textbook sellers. A lot of textbook sellers don't want to go higher than, say, 750K, but we found that we've still got success from slightly higher ranks. But in other categories, we can sometimes push the rank higher. It's also dependent on offers. So our two probably most important metrics are BSR and offers, and obviously price. But we know that there's enough textbooks that are at high price ceilings, so we don't need to worry. But the beauty of a software like Keeper is that you can search for all of these at once, and they can give you a document, an Excel document, which gives you potentially thousands of books with those set criteria, right? So we'll run a big search like that as a team, or when I was on my own, I used to just run those sort of searches and just set alerts on those sort of books and run them through different categories and get quite granular about it.
Once you've identified, which books that you should go out and get, what sites do you advise users to find those books? You mentioned there's 5 different sites in your previous interviews. Are those still valid, or should they look on? I've talked to sellers, they look on Amazon, buy it on Amazon, and then ship it in and wait a few months, like what you mentioned just now. Where would they source those books?
It does depend on if you're in the US or not. So I've always said, there's no doubt about it, Amazon's the biggest marketplace for books in the world. So we buy most of our books on Amazon. We also buy a ton on eBay because eBay's actually got the cheapest selling fees, I think. So sometimes you can get a better deal on eBay. Libris is another one, which also has coupons on every week. So sometimes you can get $20 if you spend $100 on books, which is really good cash back, right, straight away. And then Books is another one. You can also get 5% cash back on all purchases on Books if you use a good cashback extension. Those are the main, and then Biblio is a great one, which also, if you pay $25 or something like that, you get, for a whole year, you get 10% off every purchase, which is pretty crazy. So those are the big 5 that we buy from. If you have got an LLC or you're a US citizen, then there's a few more sites that you can buy from that I know that are reliable. But unfortunately, because we don't have a US billing address as a business, we can't buy from those. So I don't actually want to recommend those just because I actually don't know 100% that they're reliable. But there are plenty of other sites. But the beauty of it is as you just said there in the question, you can build a business just buying on Amazon and selling on Amazon, which is awesome because that's how big it is. But we like the fact that we can diversify to a few different other sites. And yeah, that's the beauty of it. I like the fact that we don't have to trawl through hundreds of different sites like other online arbitrage business models. I quite like that.
Talking about a little bit about software, when did you decide it's time to use a repricer, and what did you use before you used BQool?
Yeah, this is a great question because I definitely was way too stubborn on this one for way too long. So I would spend hours a day repricing. I had it set up so that I had a Google sheet where I could put all my ASINs in from Seller Central, and I could quickly tab the links out, quickly see where my books were and adjust the price, which at the time I thought was really intelligent, until I realized that I could sign up to someone like BQool, and every 15 minutes, your algorithms will be doing the job that I was doing sometimes twice a day, right? So the Seth repricer was repricing every 12 hours potentially. And then I realized, so for $25 a month, I can have however many listings, repricing from every 15 minutes. So that was a massive game changer. I don't know if I'm saying the exact correct metrics there, but it became unmanageable when I realized I was spending 2 hours a day repricing. I just thought there's way more important things I should be doing growing this business than being in it and repricing so much. So I remember I used another repricer before. I think it was just the one, and I just had loads of problems with it. And the interface wasn't very nice to look at, and it was actually more expensive than BQool. And I saw a few other influencers recommending BQool, so I just thought I'll give it a try. And as soon as I opened it up, I just thought, this looks much better. This is really easy to use. It's cheaper. And then I've never looked back really. I don't actually know how long I've been using it. It must be 2 years now, maybe longer.
I think over 2 years now. Yeah. Have your buy box win percentage improved since you start using BQool? And if so, what was your buy box win percentage before, and what about now?
I don't actually know what my buy box win percentage was before, and unfortunately, because we've changed so much from textbooks to other categories, our business model has kind of changed a bit. So I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that whilst using BQool, it's just shot up massively, especially when the AI repricing came in. That's definitely been really useful for us. So yeah, I've not looked at the percentages, but I know it's pretty high.
How much has your total sales increased since you start using the BQool AI repricer?
That's another question that I actually don't know the answer to. So unfortunately, I don't know my numbers very well on that sort of front. All I look at is I look at my P&Ls, and those numbers are the most important for me. But I don't look at the BQool dashboard enough. But yeah, it's definitely risen a lot. I do recommend the AI repricer to anyone who's asking about it.
You must be automating a lot of things, right? You don't have time to look at it. It just is working.
Yeah, I just like to look at the bottom line. What my CPA accountant sends me. As long as those numbers are good, right? I don't necessarily need to dig into the detail unless something seems off, right? And nothing seemed off, so I have not needed to do that.
So that's a tip for our audience, right? You don't need to go deep into the details if it's working well. How do you pick your rules? Like, what are some of the things you consider when you're using the BQool repricer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I took advice from one of your former employees who don't think no longer works for you, but he said that pretty much any book that's got 20 offers or less, you want to be using the AI, right? And my team and I kind of do it based on sales rank. So if we've got a book with a slightly higher sales rank, then maybe we'll use the AI sales booster or the maximizer. And then if we've got a book that's a textbook that we know is going to sell really well next month, then we'll probably go for the profit maximizer, right? But generally, on the whole, we'll use the AI equalizer because we just seem to really like that one, and it seems to fit the bill for most of our books.
That's great to know. Yeah, and then I think that definitely helps you reprice a lot faster. And anytime there's movements, yeah, it would start helping you reprice. When do you start lowering your min prices?
We have a general rule that as soon as the book hits BQool, we set all of our books at a 15% profit margin, because we know that because we're sending so many books in a day, even if everything goes to the minimum, we're still going to make good money each day. And we want to keep our IPI high. We want to make sure that our inventory is shifting as fast as possible. So we'll stick it quite like low compared to other booksellers to begin with, just because we want to churn it. And then after 60 days, we'll probably bring that down to like 5%. And then after 90, probably 1%. And then we'll go into the minuses after that, because we just want to get rid of the book. But we've got certain rules like that, and that's to put it simply. But we're going to get more granular on that going forward, especially, as you said earlier, with Amazon changing the rule on 6-month facings that haven't sold. So we always need to adapt to what Amazon are telling us. And this is an example of that we've not quite adjusted to yet.
Yeah, I think with our new conditional repricing, you can actually set the mint, you can automate them. For example, if you said up to 90 days, you're break even, then you could actually automate that. So then you don't need to go in and do the manual change yourself. It would actually help you automate, resetting your min prices. I think it's going to be great. Yeah. And then you have access to that as well. So I want to ask you, how many hours do you put into your business every week in the beginning? And what about now?
In the beginning, it was an outrageously large amount of hours per day. I would get up at 6 a.m., work till 8:15, then get the commute into work for 9 a.m. And then I'd try to work on my lunch hour. I'd come back at 5 to 6, and I'd probably work until 10 or 11, and then repeat that cycle. And then on weekends, it was pretty much just all day. My girlfriend hated me. But yeah, so I had to do that for a good year and a half, I'd say. And then I was making enough money that I could leave the job. And now it's kind of my main role, I was saying earlier, is just keeping in touch with the team, making sure everyone's happy, making sure that little tweaks are being made. So I'll use Loom a ton to let the team know, because I found that video is just a lot easier to express your thoughts and to make things happen than if you're just typing things. But yeah, my main day-to-day is hanging out on Slack with the team, sending looms out, occasionally checking, obviously I said I check my sales and stuff. So those sort of things I actually don't need to do. So it's anywhere from, some days I will actually do nothing, and then some days I might do 8 hours. But generally it'll be between 0 and 3 hours currently. So it's I'm not quite on the 4-hour work week, but I could be. It's just that I still enjoy it, right? I still enjoy selling books. I enjoy hanging out with my team. So until something more profitable or more engaging or something else happens, I will probably keep to that schedule, and we'll see if I can reduce it down to a proper 4-hour work week, but we'll see.
So I guess the girlfriend must be jealous now. No.
Ex-girlfriend, yeah.
Oh, ex-girlfriend. Yeah, ex-girlfriend. See? Yeah. And then you'll be spending you have a lot more time now when you put in the work at the start. So if you could give our audience, 3 tips from when you first started, what would they be?
Yeah, I think firstly I'd say just don't stress out, because everything's going to be okay. Because obviously, as you can imagine, when things were getting a bit scary, and I was probably in debt on the credit cards and stuff, and things weren't quite working as I'd like, I was getting quite stressed out and worried. But everything's going to work out. Yeah, don't stress out. Number 2 would be just like keep on doing what you're doing. Like you're doing the right thing. And number 3 would just be make sure you focus on your numbers sooner rather than later, because fortunately with books the profit margins were so good that I didn't need to be too in touch with my numbers. But I quickly realized that as soon as you take more of a detailed look into the actual bottom line, everything after FBA fees, after you've paid all your staff and things like that, that's so important, right? I know a lot of people like myself ignored that for too long. So yeah, definitely make sure you get a good inventory management software or a good CPA accountant who can track all this stuff for you.
When should you get an accountant for your business?
I got one pretty soon because, well, after I think it was like 6 months in, which actually saying that, it's probably not, you should probably have one from day one really. But the thing in England, you don't need to file your accounts until 9 months after your first year. So you kind of have a lot of time, but then you think you've got a lot of time, but that creeps up on you very quickly. So I would advise getting one within 3 months of you starting your business, if you know you're going to be super serious about it, because then you're just going to have a handle on your finances much earlier. And there's nothing worse than flailing about after a year looking for receipts. That just being organized is aligned to the third bit of advice I give myself. It's just like, be more organized, and the CPA accountant just comes into that, because if your spreadsheets are looking clean and tidy, it's the same as having a tidy desk, isn't it? I mean, annoyingly, my desk at the moment is not tidy at all, but I feel like if the tidier your desk looks, your mind is going to be a bit more clearer, and that person's probably a little bit, they've got more of a handle on their stuff, right? So yeah, be organized is so important.
What are your future plans for your Amazon business in the next maybe 2 to 3 years?
So we want to hit a rolling $2 million per year. So that means I think we need to be selling, it's like $5,666 on average per day. We're not quite there yet, but we're closing in on it. We've had a few $6,000 days this month, which is actually pretty amazing for considering it's outside of textbook season. So we want to get to that point, and then I guess once we get to that plateau, it's about finding another one, isn't it? So it'll probably be trying to get to 3. But I haven't thought that far ahead. I like to focus on the goal we're currently at. I don't want to look past that. It's a pretty punchy goal. I don't really know many people doing book arbitrage just purely online without doing any pallets or a wholesale or anything who are doing those sort of numbers. So looking forward to getting there, making sure the team's happy, and we'll see what other opportunities come on the horizon. I would always love to get into potentially private label wholesale, but the right opportunities come up for me yet. So yeah, broadening my horizons plus hitting those revenue figures, what I'm looking at over the next year. And I don't really think about 2 or 3 years plus just yet.
Yeah, you live in the now, right? And what's important right before you and the present. If you could have a superpower, like any superpower, what would it be?
That's a good one. I did actually have a really good answer for this, because I've heard a really good answer on a podcast, but it was a long time since I've heard it. Oh, actually, no, it would definitely, it's topical as well. It would definitely be able to read mega fast. So I could read a book in, say, a minute. That would be my superpower for sure, because then I could just read limitless books and be super intelligent.
You would be like Elon Musk, right? Like he reads tons of books. He learns every subject that he goes into. You could just build amazing other things. Yeah, that'd be incredible. Yeah.
Wouldn't mind being the richest man in the world, I guess. I don't think I'd want to be him, but if I could be a billionaire, I don't think I'd say no to that.
Is there anything else you would want to share with our audience before we end today?
Only that Amazon's an opportunity that everyone should give a shot if they're wondering about it, if they're sitting on the fence, because hopefully I've explained that it's not necessarily the most difficult thing to do. I am not anything special. I didn't go to an Ivy League university school or Cambridge or Oxford or anything. I've got no particular skill set. I went into this and I was terrible to begin with. I absolutely sucked. I managed to get banned. I lost a ton of money on bad stock. There's all kinds of stories around that. I was pretty heavily in debt before I found books, and luckily managed to turn it around. So yeah, where there's a will, there's a way. Definitely give it a shot. It's low risk. You don't need to have too much money to start it. Anyone can open an Amazon account. So that's all my advice would be to the newbies, to give it a shot. It's not saturated. It's not too late. We're still early in the Amazon journey. It's only going to get bigger, as is online e-commerce. And also, you never know when you get started with Amazon, you never know what else you're going to go into, right? You might not end up, you might start with books and you'll end up in a completely different stratosphere. And that's what most people do, actually. So I'm actually quite a weird character that I've stayed in books, because not many people do. So I've rambled a bit there, but hopefully some message gets across.
Hey, Seth, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. And for all our audience, make sure to follow Seth on his socials. There's his podcast, Books, Business, and Growth, his YouTube channel, and also his Facebook group, Sell Books FBA. That's right. So, yeah, thanks for your time today, Seth. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a blast.